Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Sane-ish podcast. I'm Holly Broughton. I am your host. The Sane-ish podcast is for people healing from trauma, addiction, abuse, mental health struggles, grief, narcissists, and every other flavor of chaos life can throw at you, and somehow still functioning mostly. I'm a survivor, truth teller, boundary setter, and proud member of the Still Healing, Still Hilarious Club. Around here, we don't do shame, embarrassment. We don't do perfection. Just real talk, dark humor, hard truths, and a whole lot of hope. Because sanity is overrated. And we all want everybody to not feel alone, because we're all here and we're all dealing with our own stuff. And so here is a safe place. And I talk to people who have been through things, different types of recovery, whether it be alcoholism, addiction, mental health struggles, narcissistic abuse, parental alienation, a variety of stuff, grief, chronic illness, trauma, PTSD, all that kind of stuff, human trafficking, all of it. But it's how they manage to get through it that matters, and to help you see that they can get through it. And so that's why I'm here, and that's why I started this podcast. So anyway, so today I have another friend of mine who I've known for quite some time, and she's also in the recovery community. She has been a big help in my recovery, as well as when I was raising my daughter. She helped me quite a bit. We also went to Zumba classes together, which were not successful in my experience. My experience, I'm not very coordinated, but she was much more successful at that than I was. But anyway, moving right along, I want to introduce her. This is Courtney Brown Fish, and I'm going to let her go ahead and start off with her story, and from inception to where she's successfully at now. And so welcome, Courtney. Welcome to Sane-ish.
Thank you, Holly. Again, my name is Courtney Brown Fish. So I really thought about in like the very beginning. So I was born, I am 47 years old. I was born in 1997 or 1978. I don't really know very much about my delivery, but I heard through the grapevine that I had the cord wrapped around my neck. I almost killed my mother, and was traumatic just entering into the world. Supposedly my dad rushed me into the NICU in tinfoil, giving me mouth to mouth. I don't know how true all that is, but I entered the world in chaos in the very, very beginning. So that has always been a story. You almost killed me. That's always been a thing that was always mentioned in my life. So I had two parents. They were married. We lived in Pearland, Texas. And this is where I think I really started to understand I did not belong, or I didn't fit in to this family, or I always felt like there was just something missing. So from what I remember living in Pearland, Texas, I would run away a lot. And this was like daycare age. I don't even know 3, 4 years old. Um, I even went to the point where I would go and gather all of the mail in my neighborhood looking for money to run away. And this is just something that I thought was, this was going to make my life better. Something just wasn't working out. I never really had a relationship with my father growing up. My father always told me that I was not a boy. I couldn't do this. Go in the kitchen and be with your mother. I did have an older sister who got all the attention. So from that time, in the very, very beginning that I can remember, trauma had already happened between the abuse by my father, physically, emotionally. Then when I was about 4, my mom decided we were going to get out and we were going to move to Monroe, North Carolina. So we did that. And, from that time on is when I really discovered this. There's just something not right because my mom was never home. Child services got called on us a lot. Because we were always running the neighborhood all hours of the day, locked out of our house.
And did your sister go with you too?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
Not at the very beginning. I don't know where she was in the very, very beginning when we did move here. Because I remember being in the car with my mom and my uncle.
Okay.
So even then, living in Monroe, North Carolina, I just still had the same thing, that same feeling like there's just something missing. I'm just not a part of, like, nobody likes me. What am I doing wrong? So, slowly as I moved into Charlotte, we moved from Monroe to Charlotte. That's where I discovered friends and didn't really get into any of the drugs or alcohol until, oh gosh, I think it was like 13 years old when I probably had my first bottle of peach schnapps. And then after that, like I thought, oh my gosh, that's the thing I've been missing, is that filler, the numbing part. So 13 years old, I was smoking cigarettes, I was running away. I never really got in trouble with the cops, but I would skip school a lot. I had massive amounts of tardiness. Meanwhile, I guess we'll back up a little bit. I was diagnosed, I repeated kindergarten probably 3 or 4 times until I was finally diagnosed with full-fledged dyslexia and ADHD. And in that time of the world, it really wasn't known what is wrong with me. So they're going to put me into an LD class with kids that have major learning disabilities. Here, I just couldn't read, write. I couldn't do any of that. So I felt like, why am I even in here? These people have some major, major issues. So back then, it really wasn't known, and my mom didn't really understand, and no one could help her understand what's wrong with me. So I just kind of just always felt like it's just normal. I can't read or write. I got F's on all my grades. I have stacks and stacks of report cards that are just horrible to see the way that I was just kind of pushed through the wayside of my educational world. So that was always told to me in the very beginning with IEP meetings. We always had 2 IEP meetings every year, and they would always end with me throwing chairs and cussing the principals out because they, pretty much said, you're stupid, you're never going to amount to anything, and it's like, okay. So, I just didn't know what to do because I don't know what's wrong with me. You're in the educational world, you should know what's wrong with me.
Yeah, and I bet that made you feel like, I mean, where could you go from there?
Right.
Like, I mean, like, that probably made you feel like, I mean, I, I don't belong anywhere.
Right. Like, where do I go?
Yeah.
How do I how to read or write, or how do I learn how to just be able to pass a class without getting, told, you're stupid. You're just never going to amount to anything, and it, it's horrible, the educational world. So anyway, again, I had my first drink at 13, continued into the dipping the world of, back then things were more legal to buy. Well, we're not even going to get into the area of like what I bought, but even at going into Toys R Us, we would buy things to numb ourselves out. And I'm appalled that Toys R Us would sell things like this. But, so from then, when we moved to Charlotte, my mom got involved in a church, and I love the church. I couldn't say anything wrong about it. But me not having a father and not having that kind of like manly figure, I think is what really drove me into a lot of my areas, because I was seeking that father comfort somehow, some way. And to me, thought this is the only way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she did go to a church, and I met a guy, a very old gentleman. And, things didn't start happening in the very, very beginning. It was almost like, I guess they were grooming me, or he was grooming me.
Mm.
Like money was handed to me. I named him Bunny because when he came to my house on Easter, he had all this just great Easter stuff. And, it was a big bunny. So that was the name that I always called him. His name is Ben. And he's actually not alive today. But, I think he was just grooming me and trying to get me to see what he can do. And things like that went on for a couple of years. And there was sexual abuse involved. In looking back at it now, I know it wasn't right, but I think that was the lack of that father figure that I was searching for, not realizing this isn't how it's supposed to be. But it was like, I would do anything desperate to figure out what a father is.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't blame myself, and I don't call myself like victimized over it, but he knew better. I didn't know better. So to me, it was just, that's just kind of more and more that had made me more into like, just getting into the dark side of like, how much more numbing myself out can I do? So I was about 16 years old. I called my grandmother, and this was my last it. I realized like, I can't go on like this anymore, because my mom is not there. My sister was older than me. She was off living her own life. And I wanted to know what better was. And I see all my friends have these great lives, and I'm like, why don't I have this mom and dad? And why don't I have these sit down dinners? Or why isn't there food in the refrigerator? Like, so meanwhile, I called my grandmother and said, I'm either going to kill myself or you're going to come and get me. And she lives in New York. So my grandmother chose, and she came and got me. And I did move to New York. And again, the trauma was already there. So the anger, the hostility, it was already there. So by the time I moved to New York, it was like more fuel onto the fire, because nobody really knew what had happened to me. And nobody really knew anything about what I felt about my mom, or what I felt about my dad, or what I felt just in my whole beginning of my life. And I didn't want to tell anybody, because I didn't think it was that big of a deal, I guess. So I acted out. The same thing I did in North Carolina, I did in New York. My grandmother tried her best to find help and seek out some way to help my disability. I continued to sneak out. I didn't have to run away, because I could sneak out, because they were old and they couldn't hear me leave. So it was like, hey, this is even better. And it just didn't get any better. The drugs and alcohol became more and more accessible into my life. And, I would come home drunk and nobody would punish me. It was just like, oh, that's just Courtney, the wild girl that she is doing her thing. So then I got mixed up with a boy. I don't know how many grades I failed. I did not graduate high school. I think it was like 10th or 11th grade when I finally just quit. I did end up getting pregnant, met a boy, got pregnant, and then that's when I found out about physical abuse. Her father physically abused me quite a few different times. Cheated on me quite a few different times. And drugs and alcohol were always involved. I was always at a party, showing myself off, doing things that I don't even remember to this day. But I did have a daughter. Michaela was born in 1997. I would have been 19 years old. Before my daughter was born, the grandmother that raised me died. And she died in 1996. So I didn't know what to do because I'm getting ready to have a baby. Well, actually, I didn't even know I was pregnant until my grandmother died. So then, it's like, what do I do? How do I raise a child? I haven't even raised myself yet. I was living with my mother in New York in a house that my family had owned.
So your mother had moved up at that time after your grandmother died?
No, she had moved. My grandmother told her a couple years later that she needed to move here and take care of her children.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It never happened, but it was just, I don't know. I guess my grandmother felt she needed to do something. So I was living in a family home. My mother was getting ready to leave. I had given birth. I don't know. Michaela probably would have been 4 or 5 months old. I could not leave New York because I had a child by a man who I had to have permission from a judge. So that took a while because I knew I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to leave. And I knew I didn't want to be stuck in this situation because where I had lived, it was just a dead end. It was just drugs. There were more bars than there were stoplights. So it's like, why do I want to be here and raise a child? At the time, I did not know of abuse, like alcohol abuse, drug abuse. Like I just thought it was normal what I was doing. So I had to get permission. My mom had left. My sister had already moved down here to North Carolina. I don't know where my mom was at the time. So I was stuck living with a friend of mine with a child in a closet, working at a grocery store for $5.15 to take care of a child. I was getting $20 in child support. So it's like, I'm just at a dead end. Like, this is not normal. And I knew I wanted better for my daughter because I wanted to be the best mom I could be with the better opportunities that she could have than to be stuck in New York. Mm-hmm. So finally, another guy friend of mine said he was moving to Florida and I wanted to be his girlfriend and I saw a way out. I thought that this was going to change our lives and make everything better. So I did have permission from a judge to leave New York, move to Florida with this guy, continued to get abused. I wasn't working. I didn't know where I just knew I was in Ocala, Florida. I wasn't even allowed to leave the house. I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't have anything. I knew I was in a horrible situation again. So I had called my sister who lived in North Carolina to come and get me. So she finally came and got me. And 99, that'd be about like 99. I don't even think I was 21 yet. So we're going to back up a little bit. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to be very truthful and blunt about it. When they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? The first thing I had said is, I want to be a stripper. For real. Like, that's me. It's hilarious. It's the most, oh my God. When I lived in
Well,
Charlotte,
you,
when I lived in Charlotte, there were two girls who lived next door to us in an apartment complex who were strippers. And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. They have the most glorious life, most beautiful hair, most beautiful outfits. Men are just goo goo and gaga over them. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. I didn't look at it like drugs and alcohol were involved. I didn't look at it like I'm almost selling my body. I didn't look at it like any of that. I just looked at it like that's beautiful. That's what I want to do. So when I moved to Charlotte, my sister lived down the road from three different strip clubs. I'm like,
well, you know what? I'm going to stop you there because I could, I could kind of see where that would uh, be impressive. At, and you could be disillusioned by not seeing the dark side.
right.
So
I didn't know what I was getting into. I just knew I had a daughter. I don't have any education. So I don't have a GED. I don't have a high school education. That like throws me into the winds of like not a career period. I didn't really know how to read or write. I don't have a clue of how to do math, so it's like, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to do what I need to do to whatever I need to do for my daughter, period. So I did. I went down to the club and met with a couple gentlemen. They got me intoxicated. I had to do a couple interviews. Of course, I'm intoxicated. I don't remember what I'm doing. Not realizing now, knowing now, like that was all just manipulation of, how can they sell me? How can they do profit off of me? But I didn't know. I was very naive. I was in a very small town when I didn't know. So I did get involved. At first I did not take my clothes off. I started off bartending and waitressing. I was too scared. I felt like I'm not there yet, but that's what I want to do, but I'm not there yet. Mm-hmm. So the interview was, of course they did have to interview me, as a stripper, but then changed my mind. So I did that for a couple of years, went around different clubs around Charlotte, had lots and lots of money. I had so many shoe boxes full of money. It was crazy. But this is where the more of the drugs and the drinking really became involved.
Courtney, I just want to stop you. Did any of that eventually like eat at your soul? Like, and I want to stop you for a minute too there, because I laugh, but I do want to say that I have several friends that have been in that industry, and they were strippers and they worked themselves through college. So I do want to say that I take that lightly, but people do what they got to do. So I don't want to discount the people who have done what they have had to do.
If I could, go back in the 20 years, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't. I love doing what I did. It's given me a lot of insight now that I can see it more clearly of that world. And I was not prostituting. I would not do half the things those girls would do because I felt like I had some control or I was just scared, so thank God I was that scared person in a way. Cause things that happen in these clubs are it's just horrible. Plus I was mean. I love to fight. So if somebody made me mad, and no one would punish me because I had the right to defend myself or protect myself. The bouncer high fived me. Oh my God, you did such a great job. But I think a lot of that just was my anger and was my just, like you walk in there and I'm not Courtney when I walk in there. So it's like I do turn off who I am and what I am. I don't share my personal life. I change my whole world and become a different person. And, you know, that I've always done my whole life was I've changed who I was. Not like the chameleon part of like hanging out with somebody and then adapting and being like them. I just always felt safer if I change who I am versus you seeing the real me. Because you won't like me, you know, or at least I thought you wouldn't. So yeah, so that's where the was introduced into a lot of I didn't, you know, I was very naive. I just knew pot, you know, I didn't know of any of these hard things. I had no clue because that's not where I had come from. So coming here, it was like I was introduced to all kinds of different drugs and I didn't know any better. So I'm like, sure, whatever, you know. And you know, slowly the money started disappearing. I still had nowhere to go. I was living with my sister, and I met a bouncer. He was going to change my life. Little did I realize, no, it wasn't going to change anything. So I did get mixed up with this bouncer, and then I got pregnant. So here I am. I don't even know how old I was. I mean, it was just horrible. So here I am again, you know, single mother, dating some guy, pregnant. You know, I needed to get married because I needed some kind of health insurance because working in those clubs don't give you health insurance. So I thought the best thing for me to do was to marry this man. So I did marry him. You can tell in my wedding pictures, I was the most miserable bride there ever could be because I didn't marry him. You know, it's like I felt like I had to do what I had to do to please everybody because, you know, my family looked at me again, here I am, another child out of wedlock, you know, and I was like, I don't think anybody should have ever done that. I think you should have supported me, child out of wedlock, and supported me and that child, not worried about, oh my God, she doesn't have a father or, you know, whatever. So that marriage lasted probably about 6 months. He got physical. He was always physical. And then somehow I got a court order to take me into a mental institution because they said I wanted to kill myself and my child. I'm like, no, I want to kill him, not me. You know, so it's almost like God was doing for me what I could not do for myself back then. Because being put in this mental institution was the best thing for me and my child that I was pregnant with. Because he protected that child, he protected me, and they actually got to see who the crazy one was. And that was him, who would come down and beat on the doors, call every day, that's my wife, I need to see her, da, 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 da. So it was like a blessing that I got to figure out how to get away from him. So I did. I got away from him. So here I am again, living at my sister's house with 2 children, back in the strip club, not the same one that he was at. I don't even know if he still worked there anymore. You know, so it just continued the chaos of back to the drinking, back to the drugs, not being a productive mother. You know, my children were young, so they weren't even in school. So I didn't have to worry about that part. You know, but it was just a lot of it I don't remember. I don't know if it's just my body and my way of protecting myself, of not remembering that those times of what happened. You know, I was always told that that is a protection to not allow you to just remember. I mean, some things I just don't remember. My husband will say something one time and I'll be like, I have no clue what you're talking about. You know, so I continued to work in the strip club. My husband's going to kill me. But I continued to work in the strip club and I did meet another guy. And I knew this time I did not want a relationship with anybody. I did not want to get pregnant. I didn't want a relationship. I just wanted to have a good time and to see what it's like because I felt like a man was always on my side. Back in the day, they used to call me Baskin Robbins because I had 31 boyfriends in a day. You know, so it was like, because I knew well, I didn't know, but it was almost, again, going back to that, finding that father figure. How do I find, okay, this man's going to be my daddy, and it's like, no. But I did meet a guy, and, I've straight out, I had children. This is what I do for a living. This is how it is. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I just want to be good friends. And if something flourishes, great. If nothing does, whatever. Let's just be friends. So I introduced him into a world that I probably should have never introduced him. And, there was a time where the police were involved. I was going to probably go to jail for a very long time. My children were probably going to be taken away because they're by two baby daddies. So they were probably going to be split up, so I did everything in my power to make sure none of that had happened. Again, I think it was God doing something for me and I could not do for myself. So I did hire a lawyer, and the lawyer said they never read me my rights. They never fingerprinted me. I got to go home, but I still had some kind of consequences. So I did hire a lawyer. And he's like, I don't know what your charges are. I don't know if anybody's going to do anything. And I'm like scared out of my mind. So nothing happened. And he said, you have 5 years for these people to press charges against you. So they have 5 years in that time period to charge me with something. So for 5 years, I was terrified that they could come and get me. And once that statute had arrived, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm clear because no one came and got me. So gosh, I was so lucky then. And that's where I think kind of the wake-up call of like the world that I'm living in is like just not, it's not a good, nice world. I eventually I think I quit dancing. I think I was just bartending. The man that I had met, of course, he's my husband today. We have been married for 21 years. And just
He's such a good guy. He's such a good guy.
he is not, he has his own trauma, but he's always like, man, Courtney, you've got it. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, he doesn't do drugs. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do anything. And it's like, I had to make him do these things. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me no? Why didn't you tell me this isn't right? But, I guess we did what we did. But we do have another kid. So my kids, I have my daughter, Michaela, so I'm going to say this about my children. So meanwhile, I am not a high school graduate. I have full flown, I don't even know what level of grade I am technically by educational. It's probably elementary school. So I do have my daughter, Michaela. She is 28 years old. She is full-fledged dyslexic. I made sure from the time she was in school and when she was diagnosed that I was going to do every power in my book to fight for this child. Whether I knew what I was doing or didn't know what I was doing, I was going to figure it out because she was not going to have the system let her down. And if I have to be in there every day at school and follow her around and make sure she gets, whatever accommodations that she was supposed to have, there are teachers out there who would not give her accommodations. And I did, show myself, because if I couldn't get her to graduate high school, like that would be just, I don't know, detrimental for me, because I didn't want her to think that there's something wrong with you and that you're broken and that you're stupid and that you're never going to amount to anything, because that's just how they make you feel. Or, I feel that in my own self, because it's like, why can't I do other things, the things that other people can do? What? I don't know why. But anyway, she is a high school graduate. She has a cosmetology license, and she has been a hairdresser basically almost 8 years, 9 years, I don't know. And that for me is like, oh my gosh, I didn't do it, but it's like me achieving something that I couldn't achieve through her, and I have another son who is 26 years old. He is a high school graduate. He is a college graduate, and he 26, yeah, 20, 25 or 26. And he is a homeowner. I'm like, for him to even own his own home in his 20s is just like amazing. Works in polyplastics or something like that. I don't know, really. I don't understand what he does, but kind of the engineering electronic department. I don't know. But, I'm like, gosh, I did another successful thing with the son. Granted, he has ADHD and ODD. He does not have any addictions. My daughter doesn't have any addictions. I've made it crystal clear that we live in this world of recovery. And if you need help, we'll figure it out. I have another son who is just turned 20 years old. He graduated from high school. He is in culinary college now. So he will be graduating next year sometime with his culinary degree. So it's like, I don't know. It just baffles me that I helped provide in that. I'm not this lost cause, even though I didn't achieve what they achieved. Like we all achieved it together.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, you advocated for them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's huge, because you didn't have anybody to advocate for you. So you were able to advocate for your children.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And now, because you advocated for your children, they are very successful adults.
Yeah.
So,
and even the addiction world, in the mental health world, I mean, like my son has his own mental health issues, and we're going to walk through that and we'll figure it out. But it's like between all of my children, I'm not ashamed of, let's talk about it. You want to kill yourself? Let's talk about it, because I've always been an open person, very open with my children, of like, the world is sometimes not nice, or things can happen. And if something happens, you let me know. I always felt like I had to protect my children, because what happened to me was not going to happen to them. Between sexual abuse, between abuse, my ex-husband abused my one son, it's like, what more can I do to keep these children from turning into some kind of, be a productive member of society. Let's focus on that versus problems or issues. And if we have problems and issues, we're going to seek out some kind of help or whatever.
right.
And I think that's where the lack of, I did not have, I went to counseling and I told counselors whatever I wanted to tell them, and it's like, that wasn't really help. That was just me playing games, I guess.
Trying to get manipulating.
Yeah, just attention-seeking behavior. That's all it was for me.
So at what point did you choose recovery? I mean, at what point did you?
So I have 16 years of no drugs, no alcohol. And it took me 2 years, I think, before that 16 years, because I knew I had a problem.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was going to leave me. My children are going to be dispersed into all different directions. 2007, I think. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go to treatment. So I did go to treatment. I did not listen. I did not pay attention. I didn't think I had a problem. So I did participate in my treatment. Went to those meetings, did all these things, and I still didn't think I had a problem. So it was like I kept using and manipulating and doing all these things because I guess I just didn't want to admit or be defeated. Mm-hmm. I'm Courtney. I can do what I want to do, how I want to, you're not going to tell me. So finally, back in 2008, when I went to my last treatment, that's when the therapy, the trauma, what has happened to you, this is why you're this way, and how do you live life without, doing the things that I was doing, because I didn't know how. And I knew either I'm going to die or I'm going to kill myself, or, like there was no other option, because my whole world was crumbling anyways. So I finally took it seriously, and, I participated in 12-step programs, and, then more issues came up, I knew the whole God situation had always been such a hard thing for me. So because
was that because of the church issue and the guy and the gentleman at the church, or was that just an overall issue?
No, it's because of what happened at the church.
Okay.
Because I don't know, I just always believed, like, if this was happening at a church, I guess I just didn't understand, like, I would blame God that happened in his house or whatever, realizing now it wasn't. But even still to this day, the God thing is a very hard thing. But I realize in my own situation, I'm in control of what I allow a God to be, and what I call it, and how I deal with it, and how I pray. Because of the programming, I guess, as a child, you don't have the choice to pick. They pick it for you. And now that I'm older, it's like, I don't have to follow what my parents followed, or what everybody else is following, and for some reason, just saying the word God is just very hard for me. So, changing it, Bob, that's his name, so it's like, I pray to Bob, or, the universe or whatever, because that's, to me, what's making my world go round, or answering my prayers. So, and plus, religion's really never been pushed on even my children as growing up. We went to church, we participated some, but it was like, I didn't want to force something on somebody that didn't have a choice, And, my children, they really thank me for that, because they can choose whether they were children or not children, or, I was just going on the religion part of the way that I thought was appropriate.
And fortunately, the 12-step programs are more spiritual, and you can pick and choose what works for you. You don't have. And that's what religion is too structured for me. I can't get into, I just can't be like, I can't be locked into that stuff.
I can't even read the Bible, because half those words, I don't even know how to say them. So it's like,
I need to be free. Like, I need to have what works for me.
Right.
I need to, have what lifts me spiritually.
Right. And that's what I do a lot of today, grounding myself, working on the inner core of, like, the issues, because I believe that my issues are always inside me, of, like, the trauma, the abuse, the whatever. It's how I get that out, and how I can move past everything that had happened to me, instead of being the victim, or woe is me. That's what I would play a lot, because that's what a lot of my family members would always do. Oh, poor Courtney, she doesn't have a dad, or, and it's like, no, we don't need to play poor Courtney. Let's figure out how to fix it. So I have done AIT, Advanced Integrated Therapy, where they work on the chakras that a lot of this trauma comes from, and it was amazing, because to this day, since I have done that, I don't even remember. It's like they just disappeared. So when I even tried to go back to any of the trauma, I can't, because for some reason it's just gone. And I don't even know how it works, but it is just this magical thing that, like, I'm not angry or bitter over things that had happened anymore. Um, between my mom, between my dad, you know, I really haven't had a relationship with my mom in a very long time. And then once I did the AIT, I could actually make that phone call and could actually make an amends. I've never made an amends to my mom. So when I was 15 years clean, I finally made an amends, because I guess I just didn't know how to take the accountability of my actions, when I know I played a lot of the a lot into the relationship, but I don't know. I just didn't know how to just almost like accept it, because I felt like a mom should be a mom and a daughter should be a daughter. So, a lot of it is just still working progress. I mean, I'm in counseling today. I pray to Bob. I meditate a lot, and it's not just like, I don't even know how everybody meditates, but I do self meditating where, I sit for 15 minutes, listen to a whole thing, open up my chakras, because I want to be calm. I want to be not so anxious when it comes to decisions, because that's what can happen. It's like when you're around an angry person, you turn angry. And I don't want to, I don't want to be like that bad negative energy person. I want everybody to, like, we're chill today. It's okay. It's like, for some reason, it's like just nothing bothers me. It's okay.
Yeah.
And it's just like amazing on how I can go from where I was to where I am today, even though it took so much work, because, like, I wanted what I wanted now, and I wanted to just be fixed, not realize how much work really has to go into being fixed,
Yeah. Well, that's recovery.
Right.
That's recovery. And but, and the thing is recovery is never finished.
Right.
Like, you think in the beginning, oh, well, I'm going to get sober and that's it. Well, no.
I'm gonna have everything back. Everybody's gonna love me. Nobody. Yeah.
No, that's not how it works.
Nobody believes me, and it's like, how do you get all that back? And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. I have to do this thing every day. Like,
Right.
I still have stuff I have to work on, and then stuff pops up that I'm like going, where the fuck did that come from?
Right.
I'm like, oh, great. Now I got something else to work on. All right. Well, here we go.
Right.
So,
And that's the thing. Like, in my recovery, I feel like so much has happened. And the way that it happened is the way that it's supposed to happen, between family members dying, things happen to my children. And it's like, I don't know how to get through it, but we're going to get through it, and we're going to figure it out one way every day. Because I don't want to go backwards. I just want to go forwards and continue to let my children have a mother, and, let my husband have a wife, and, let me have me, and be just a sane person, even though, I have some weird things that I do, but it's like, that's how I have to live my life. Right. Like, especially with God and Bob, and, people are like, oh my God, you meditate all the time. But that's what keeps me sane.
right.
I can actually sit still, and, like, for one time in my life, because for a while there, it's like, you can't even sit still. You've got the jitters, you got to go, and it's like, I don't know, just relax.
And how many dogs do you have now?
So we have three.
And then do you still have chickens?
I have new chickens. Yes, I have 8 chickens. Right now, we don't really know 6 of them what sex they are because they're the bougie, silky chickens. So we don't know what sex they are, but 2 of them are roosters. They all have names. They're all, I go out there and I sit there and meditate with them, and it's just like, it's just that grounding, getting sitting in the dirt, hanging out with the chickens. It's like the things that I would never do or listen to, right? Like the birds chirping or the wind
Right.
moving, like, it's like, oh my gosh, where has all that been?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Stuff that you probably wouldn't have thought of or even considered before.
No, because it's so chaotic. It's just like, where can I get my next fix? Or when can I get some more money? Or how am I going to do this? And, it just.
Or or trying to get yourself out of another chaotic or dramatic situation.
Right. And it's never your fault. It's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah. Blaming everybody else and, whatever. Do the usual crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
The usual crap. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm, and I'm amazed because, from the beginning, there was trauma and all that kind of stuff. And, your disability, you turned into ability,
Mm-hmm.
And, all of the stuff that you went through, you have turned it around and made very productive children, which is commendable. And then you turned your trauma into, to where there's not any anymore.
Yeah.
Which is, because to me, recovery is about healing. And I mean, that's the message that I'm trying to get across on this podcast is that, even though we go through difficult times, it doesn't have to, we don't have to sit in it or live in it, or there's always solutions.
Right.
And it may not, there's, what works for one person may not work for another person, but you can always keep trying something, obviously that what was that, what was the therapy that you were going to?
Advanced integrated therapy.
Yeah. Advanced integrated therapy. That worked for you.
Yeah. As cool is, and it's funny because the guy who was my therapist is a guy that I met in one of my programs, and
yeah, I mean, see, yeah. I mean, you just don't know until and that's how a lot of my recovery has happened. I have absolutely stumbled on it. Like I wasn't even expecting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that was a God thing or I don't know, but.
Well, I think at that time, I was diagnosed with, I don't even know if I'm saying it correct. It's called dysthymia, where it's a long-term depression in women. I didn't know I was depressed this was probably 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I didn't know. I just thought it was normal to sleep all day, not do anything, go to work, sleep all day, I just thought that that was the norm. I wasn't doing bad things anymore. So it's like, what is wrong with me? So he did recommend I go see somebody to prescribe some kind of antidepressants. I'm like, whatever. But I did listen to him. I went to a lady and, did the whole chart thing, talked about what was going on. And, that's when she did diagnose me with this kind of long-term depression. And she says I'm not necessarily, I'm like a part-time stay-at-home mom. So I work part-time and I still take care of the things that need to be taken care of at home. But I just thought all that was normal. And then she diagnosed me with that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I probably had this for years and didn't even know it, because it was like, it would come on so suddenly where I'm just sad about everything and I can't get out of bed. I don't want to do anything, and to me, it was just my norm. When
Yeah.
it was an actual diagnosis on like what this is, and got on an antidepressant. I was very scared about that, because I was very scared about the guinea pig. Like, some work,
Yeah.
some don't work, so thank God I got one that immediately worked. I was on the lowest dose. She was just like, I can't believe you're functioning on such a low dose. And, but I guess it's because I've managed my own depression for so long. It's like, I really just needed a little extra help.
Yeah.
And it's just been more eye-opening on how we don't really talk about these things. We don't talk about seeking professional help when there's something wrong, because I was always scared. If I tell somebody I want to kill myself, what are they going to do? They're going to throw me in a mental institution, lock me up, and they're going to think I'm crazy. When it's
well, yeah. And the thing is too, is that a lot of people, when they say that, they don't really mean it. What they're really saying is they want out of whatever situation they're in.
right.
They don't really want to do that.
I mean, but it's like, thought I was crazy in a way, like, but I didn't also like to talk about how I was feeling either.
Right.
Because of the judgment or whatever, and, I think that's just a lot of how I got through just a lot of my life was, don't talk about it, be quiet, just keep going forward, and it's going to get better.
Well, that's the other thing of this podcast, is to break down the stigma of the mental health and the alcoholism and addiction, because the more we talk about it, the less of the fear there is around it. And because, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's anybody on the face of this planet that doesn't suffer from a mental health issue, because we all go through things, and we all have sadness, we all have highs, we all have lows. So you can't tell me that people,
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with it.
Right. No.
And so if you stuff it down and not talk about it, then you're only doing yourself a disservice.
Right.
So
even the fact, like, my grown children are all seeking some kind of professional help, and I am so ecstatic for that, because like, they've got the willing to say, I'm depressed, or I'm sad, or something's not right. Where do I need to go? My youngest is in counseling, my middle one's in counseling, and it's like, I don't see there's anything wrong with counseling.
Sure.
I don't know what their problems are, traumatic problems, but if you need somebody to talk about it and you don't want to talk to me, have at it. If you need some kind of medicine help, I mean, Tristan, I don't want to like out him, but he has some diagnoses, and it's like, okay, well, how do we make this better so you can be productive and not be stuck where you are, and to me, I'm like, more power. If we could all be in counseling together, let's make a big old circle and have it, because trauma can happen at any time, at any moment. It doesn't just happen, at the beginning of your life,
Mm.
and, especially with I do believe with a lot of stay-at-home moms, or it just, I'm lost. I can't be a mom anymore because now my children are grown and it's like, what's next?
Right. I get
And
that.
that's where I am of like, what do I do in my life? I don't have an education. I work, part-time, and it's like, what is for me? And that's where I've really seeked more into just the recovery, the mental health part. I mean, I'm involved in a lot of groups that I speak to women, because I don't want them to feel ashamed of anything, especially even being in the disability area. Like, I will fight tooth and nail for somebody who's told me they're diagnosed with some kind of disability, and it's like, well, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
That's a lot of the problem with my disability is I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to know, or you're going to judge me and you're going to call me dumb. And, now it's like, today I have more of a backbone. Okay, so what? I can't read, but it's like, what am I going to, what is it? I can read some things. I can memorize a lot because I've learned how to maneuver my life into my own world. I mean, they say that we're smarter than normal people because we have to learn how to get through things
Right.
without getting through them the proper way. But it's, it just, but I don't want to have to get through without the accommodations either.
You have to adjust. You
Right.
have to adjust your life accordingly. And I've had to learn to do that with my chronic illness because I used to be an active person, a very active person. And then when I got diagnosed with my chronic illnesses, it was a blow. And I couldn't do that anymore.
Right.
And then I had to adjust. And that was not a fun thing to do.
Right. Right.
But I mean, what options do you have? You don't have any. You have to adjust accordingly,
Right. Right.
you know? So, 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 Courtney, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners or viewers with?
I mean, I look at it like for me, there was always, I never lost hope. For some reason, that word has always been so big for me because it's like, if I can get through what I've got through, like, what else can happen? And there's always like hope for something bigger and better. I make it out to be like it's so drama that my children have moved away and woe is me and what am I going to do? But it's like, I don't know, something's around the corner. I have hope that maybe I'll get 20 chickens and can just be living at home with chickens. It's like, I don't know what is in my horizon, but I have hope that like something's around the corner. And even if there is a problem, it's like, just say that there's a problem and there might not even be a problem. But it's like, we're so quiet about our traumas or things that have happened to us because of our own embarrassment and our own shame of it. And, I don't think there's any shame in anything that has happened to me. And I don't even know the word, but it's like, I don't blame my parents for anything that has ever happened to me. I think we've all done the best that we could with what we know. And, anybody can get through you just have to just like, I always have to say, just live in the now. I stay in my now. And that's, or my mom, I'll tell my mom, stay in your lane, because
Yeah.
a lot of it's none of my business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you obviously found your purpose,
Yeah.
helping people understand that, you know, it's there, and there is no shame
Yeah.
or embarrassment in what we all go through. And so, and you just keep moving forward because
Yeah.
we don't know what's around the corner.
No, I don't
And
know.
we don't know what doors are going to open,
Right.
you know? Okay, well, I always ask my guests 10 questions at the end of the podcast. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First question. What skill would you like to ultimately master and why?
It's, I mean, I don't even know if this is a skill, but I, I've really been thinking a lot about this. I was very big in ice skating. I loved ice skating. It was the best part of my Saturdays and Sundays. And I have really contemplated, they have a old timer coffee meetup. And I really want to get back into it and really work on my whole ice skating again, and it's like, that was my biggest thing. My husband was always like, wow, you're amazing, and it's like, I want to get back into that. And I wouldn't be in the Olympics, but you never know.
So ice skating?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking about that the other day, but my ankles are so not.
Probably my ankles too, but I'm just, I don't know. I felt like that was like, as a little girl, like it was almost like me having my own little meditation session,
Yeah, it
and
is.
it just took everything away from me. Like I could just be on the ice and not have any care in the world of problems.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good one. What has been the highlight of your life thus far and why?
my life. I mean, there's a couple I can think of. I mean, just being a part of my children and having them achieve what all they have achieved, like, because I think it's a statistic of children who do come from addiction worlds with parents,
Mm.
both parents who have addiction, because both my two children, their fathers are in that world, and then me, and it's like, whoa, what's going to happen? But for them to not even have the problem of addiction and to get through what they're getting through, it just, I don't know, it's just something that I just smile upon every day of like, I know I didn't do that, even though I would love to take credit, but it's like, it's so amazing, just to see them. It's almost like it just makes me jealous at times that like, wow, y'all had a good mom.
Yes, they did.
You
Yes,
know,
they did.
I take credit, but I want your mom.
Yeah.
Even being married for as long as I have, me and my sister both have 20+ year marriages, and it's just like, I tell my youngest son all the time, don't you feel grateful to have two parents who are still married, in love, want to goo goo and gaga over each other 20 some years later? It's like, I don't know what that's like. And, it just baffles me on how much we work on our relationship and we just don't let it go, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I guess it's the comfortableness of the relationship. I mean, like, I'm still madly in love with him, he is still madly in love with me, and it's like, but we still have to work on it, Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, you make me mad. But, it's like we know how to communicate. We know how to like work on things. I mean, we have some like crazy conversations, in-depth conversation. It's like, wow, I didn't know that about you. We've been together forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. What risk have you not taken that you would still like to take, and why haven't you?
I don't know. I think I've taken all the risks. And I don't want to do them.
Okay.
What risk?
I mean, hell, you were a stripper, so I mean, what else do you need to?
Right. Well, I think the risk part, I think my children and my husband would love to see me go to school and actually get my GED. And
Okay.
you know, I don't I don't feel confident in doing something like that because a lot of the real educational level would come out, and that's kind of an embarrassment for me. If they say, "Oh, you're a third grade reading level," be like, "Oh my God." So, would I take that risk? I don't think I'm ready.
Well, it
That's
would be something. It would be something to shoot for.
right. And I'm never going to say never. Today,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Never say never.
I don't know if I ever would be or when I would be, but
And no embarrassment. No embarrassment. Do you have any nick or pet names?
What's a Nick?
A nickname, like a
Oh,
nickname or a pet name?
so I have a couple. So my children do call me Courtney, which is hilarious. My one son calls me G Dog, I think he said. That's my new nickname.
G Dog.
G Dog. Um, but my nickname growing up, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to tell people this. My nickname growing up was Snortney.
Snortney.
Everybody called me Snortney or Court, which
Is that, well, I call you Court, but
I think it's fun.
Is Snortney for the reasons I think, or?
I don't know why. It's
Oh,
just,
okay. Okay.
um, I have a cousin. We would be the Snorts. I don't know why. And my husband told my son that the other day again, and it's just like, "Hey, Snortney." I'm like, "No, that's not my name."
Okay.
Dog.
Okay. What person, living, dead, or a character, do you most relate to, and why?
I don't know.
You don't know?
A character?
Well, living, or living, dead, or a character. So,
I don't know.
like, you know, like Marilyn Monroe, or anybody.
I never really even thought about that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you don't have to have anybody if you don't. If you
Nobody.
don't. Okay.
Snortney, just me.
Okay. Snortney doesn't have anybody. Okay. Who do you admire, and why?
Do I admire?
Yeah.
I don't want to get sad. Um, so I really admire my daughter.
Okay.
You know,
That's
I don't know. I mean, it's just something that I just see in her of just like there's no failure. As free flowing. I mean, she does not let anything hold her back, and that
awesome.
that to me is just like I mean, half the time she could say something wrong or read something wrong, and she'd be like, "So," like there's no I don't even know what the word is, but there's just none of her like letting anything bother her,
Yeah.
and it's just, I don't know, just seeing her flourish, being in relationships. I mean, she's not, well, she's in a relationship now, but she's taken quite some time off in a relationship and just learn how to discover herself and just to see, like, she's so chill. She is nothing like me. I don't know how Bob gave her to me because she's so opposite. But it's just like, if I could just be her for a day.
Well, sometimes, well, I always say our children teach us they, more than we can ever teach them. They
Yeah,
always, they always teach us. So
she's
for
just,
real.
I don't know, she's just so, like, if Michaela could just live with unicorns and kitty cats and glitter all day long, like that's where she would be. And I'm like, I want to be there.
Yeah, for real.
Like, she just does her own thing. And there's no shame in any of it. It's like she's so strong, like, to get through what she's gotten through. It's like I wish I could have a little bit of that strength from her. Um,
That's awesome.
so yes.
Okay, so next question. This is a trick question. What has been your biggest mistake or regret and why? And why I say that's a trick question is because usually our mistakes aren't really mistakes because they're actually learning opportunities. So we learn from them and we grow. So it's not really a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a mistake in a way, but it saddens me that I treated my grandmother the way that I treated her. And, it's just always been a thing for me. Even though I know I can't take any of it back, I can do whatever I can to apologize, even though, she would be 96 today. I think
Mm,
96 today. I wished I would have known better. I tortured this lady, even though
mm,
she did the best she could to help me, or even tell her I loved her, because I don't even think like any of that was ever expressed because I didn't know how to love anybody because I didn't even love myself,
mm.
and just really apologize. I mean, thank God in recovery, I got to do that with my grandfather before he died. So it's almost like I got to do that the right way, even though I didn't do that with his ex-wife. But part of me is, like I would love to just go back in time and just tell her thank you.
Yeah.
Because I think if my grandmother would have lived, would have still been alive and my daughter was born, I truly do not believe I would have custody of my child. Because I think
Mm.
it's such my story would be so different. So it's almost like I'm not glad that she passed, but I'm glad that something changed to make me change something in me. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she sees you and she's probably proud of the person that you became. So,
Yeah, I mean, I named Michaela after her, so and I talk about her all the time. Even though my children have never met her, they probably would know her if they see her if she was alive.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what's your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word,
Yeah,
I like cunt.
fair enough. Fair enough.
People are like, oh, like I'm like, it's okay. It's just a word. I like it when the older ladies say the fuck word and I giggle because I'm just like, look, that's them being them. You know,
Yeah.
I I've just learned I'm not gonna hold anything back anymore in my world. I'm gonna do what I do the way that I do it. I'm covered in tattoos. I have a tattoo with my daughter. I don't even know if you want to know that people are like, oh my God, that's so disgusting. But it's like, but this is who we are. Like, why can't we just be us?
Well, the thing is if you're going to be your authentic you, then be your authentic you. But as long as you're not hurting anybody else,
I'm not hurting
what
anybody.
difference does it make?
Right.
Don't hurt anybody else. Don't, as long as you're not physically hurting anybody else or, verbally abusing anybody else. I mean, be your
Yeah.
authentic self, dude.
Yeah. And that's where I tell my children all the time, don't worry about what people say about you. Continue to go on life, right? Like, Michaela's covered in head to toe in tattoos and she's a hairdresser, and it's like, it's okay. What am I gonna do? Spank her and tell her no? Like that's only gonna make things worse.
It'd be more beneficial if you help other people too, but I mean, you
Yeah.
do you, boo, but but yeah, I'm all for being your authentic self. So, okay, so next question. What is your ethnicity or your heritage? Do you know? Like my heritage is like I'm Irish, German, and English, or English, German, and Irish, or English, Irish, and German. So, do you know what your heritage is?
I have heard it being mentioned, but I've never paid attention to even know.
You haven't? You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. I just like to know because
I know you can look my name. Well, not my name, but you can look my grandfather's name because there's some, I don't know. There's some kind of book or something about us.
well, I just like to know just because it just goes to show that it doesn't matter if you're uh, when you're an alcoholic or addict or whatever, mental health, um, doesn't matter. It's all
Right.
across the board. It's across the board.
Yes. Yes.
So, but I like to know too because I find it interesting. Everybody's
I
where
have
everybody comes from too. So
I even told my mom that the other day about going on Ancestry, but it's like I don't want to find anything that I'm not aware of.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right, last question. What do you hope your higher power, or Bob in your case, would say to you when you pass, or you transition, or you die? What do you hope he would say to you?
I don't know if it's necessarily say, but I hope if that happens that I get to be with my grandmother. Um,
Oh, good.
hope that they're all, because all of them have passed. I have six grandparents and they've all
Mhm.
passed. And I hope they're up there partying, having a good time, and just like I want to come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. You just hope they're waiting there for you
Yeah.
when you get there.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you so much, Courtney. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story, and especially your vulnerability on on your journey with you know, your disabilities, and, letting people know that it's not.
I think your mic cut out. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I don't know what happened here. But anyway, thank you,
Your mic cut out. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Little.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're having technical difficulties here. Anyway, thank you, Courtney, for for being with us. This is how Sane-ish happens. Thank you for being with us
Okay,
and
yes.
hearing your your story and your vulnerabilities with us, and like your learning disabilities, and letting people know that they can not be embarrassed
Yeah.
if they're going through the same things,
Oh
and that
yeah.
you can work through those things and raise productive and successful children too.
Oh yeah.
So I appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
I I want to be able to, and I want that to be hope for other people, and hopefully empower them to get them through those types of things as well.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right. Stay with us, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay with us for the next episode. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.